All right, so for this week, we wanted to talk about the fascial system and the fascial slings, and to kind of build on a lot of the things that I've already put out on this. We want to look at this from a couple of different angles, and that's how it can be utilized for the athletic performance side, and then also how it can be utilized for more of the rehab, restorative, therapeutic side, because the fascial system is wide-reaching. There's a lot of things to really consider. So the three main properties are viscosity, elasticity, and plasticity. And with each of these, we have a speed component, a fluid dynamic component, and then just a tissue tolerance component, or ability to be elastic or reflexive, and then also have tensile and functional strength as well. So Jeremy, you can go ahead and kind of get into what you do on more of the getting them back to health side, and then we can kind of go back and forth from there.
Yeah, I mean, like when I think of the fascial slings, it's really, to me, no different from doing your multi-planar, multi-directional kind of like rehab exercises. It's just that either some people don't know or are not really used to the term fascial slings, but indefinitely they're training them sometimes. Where on the other half, it's like maybe they're stuck in like a sagittal kind of plane where they're continuing to do all these like other phase one, phase two kind of rehab work when they're in the later phases and they're only kind of training one sling. So to me, like in the rehab world, fascial slings should be kind of the like umbrella view of things. How do we like incorporate someone getting back from an ACL tear? How do we incorporate the slings into that? You know what I mean? And going back to like the fluid dynamics, the part where body tissues have to kind of conform to certain movements or velocities or accept different forces. To me, that's all fascial slings, because if one sling is like, I guess, lack of better terms, not working properly, you're kind of feeding into an overuse kind of thing. You're feeding into underuse maybe, or into like other factors that can contribute to another injury occurring. So to go off that too, it's like maybe you have like a myriad or a domino effect of injuries occurring after injury after injury. When if you take a step back and you're like, oh, these kind of injuries are occurring on the same kind of like sling point. Well, there might be some truth to trying to train those slings within that rehab kind of like environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and not to cut you off, but I think a caveat to this that's important is like, yeah, fascial slings has become like this nuance or like trendy type of term, which sucks because the fascial system is just an anatomy piece. It's just a part of the human anatomy. You know what I mean? Like, so it's silly how this is like a debated combat thing. And any single movement that you're doing is a fascial-based movement.
Right.
It's important to understand that this is just a different lens on the same thing that's occurring.
Right.
What I believe is that we've just understudied or underappreciate the significance of the contributions of the fascial system, and specifically the fascial slings, because every single thing about human movement is contralateral in nature. There's no joint movement that occurs without rotational movement. So for me, It's just very silly and self-limiting to think that doing things in just this sagittal-based or bilateral-based fashion and then just get them strong enough is just a little bit bullshit to me.
Like back when I was in like the collegiate setting, I mean, you put me kind of hip to the trendy fascial sling kind of term. So it's like, that's how I would kind of look at it. Very 3D based, just because like the body movement, sports, it's all in 3D. You know what I mean? Like there's some aspect of twisting, flexing, extending, et cetera, which again, it's a sling based movement. And go ahead.
And it's all redirection of forces. It's not just force acceptance and force production. It's redirection. Right. And that's all the way down to something binary, such as even just Olympic weightlifting, which is it's a tremendous sport in its own regard. But comparatively speaking, it is a binary sport. There is, a very small pool of movements that you're going to actually use in competition. But think about the receiving position on a clean or the counter movement in a jerk. It is force production and it is force management, but it's also the redirection. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the elastic properties or the fascial tensioning and then the contraction of the elastic system, right? And being able to redirect force efficiently. And maybe she can speak to that the best.
Everybody talks about and knows how technical the Olympic lifts are, and how precise you have to be in certain positions. So kind of going along with those like force vectors and everything, and redirection of force. Like if you're trying to save the bar in a snatch, like that is not binary in any way, shape, or form. Like you've got to try to call on so many different stabilizing muscles, but you have to be able to handle that manipulation of that barbell over your head and then try to then stand up with it without unlocking your elbows. Like there's so much happening in that the like instantly in that quick milliseconds of time that you need to perform the lift. And so having looking at it from that perspective, as far as redirecting force and fascia being like a true
integrator,
thank you, of that, there's no reason why you shouldn't be training those slings regardless of your sport. Like Olympic weightlifting is like the specific like binary, that's what we've got, versus baseball, football, that are more clearly rotational, obviously depending on your position
and just variable.
Olympic lifting is very like deep longitudinal, like
oh yeah,
for sure.
And again, like speaking with like the slings and stuff, it's like if you've never done it, if you're taking like Nicole, you could probably speak on this better than I can, but if you're taking like a person like day one that comes up to you like, hey, I want to learn these like the snatch and the clean and jerk, they're not going to get overhead like you want them to. But then that's a quality you have to train within that sling system, because it's also like neurological. Like you need to train your body to neurologically get there and like train those the fascia to actually move.
Properties.
You've got to, not only can they not get there because neurologically it's just so foreign to them, but the majority of the people that we see are so immobile for what the sport demands and requires, especially when it comes to the lats.
And that's not to cut you off, but I think we could all agree on that, because this is another critical point, that a lot of immobility is not just the joint in the capsule.
Right.
A lot of immobility is the lack of ability of the fascial tissue to release, or there are too many adhesions.
Or to glide.
It's lost its viscous properties, right? Once you lose the viscous properties, which by the way are kind of maintained or trained under fast loads, right? And slow loads. It's a load variation, right? But to the point, people get, so jammed up on like band distraction and all these, super end range terminal mobility drills, which are great for what they're supposed to do. But a lot of times you're kind of putting the cart before the horse, because it's really that fascial tissue that isn't gliding how it should.
Right.
And that's, a critical thing to understand, because you'll spend so much time working the wrong thing for no outcome in return.
And I feel like in training the slings, even if you're like a one plane athlete, I guess you could say, Olympic lifting, powerlifting, bodybuilding, I feel like might not be bodybuilding, but anyway, like training the slings too with that neurological component and learning how to move will increase your like movement literacy.
Absolutely.
So that's
Olympic weightlifting, it's like the perfect blend of like speed, strength, and power. And so in order to be able to perform that quickly, everything has to be synchronous and moving correctly and working efficiently to be as optimal as possible. So like, even from that like neurological component, like getting your lat and your contralateral glute to, be firing together and working well, so that way the lats, and I think about how important the lats and the glutes are in their own way in Olympic weightlifting. So why on earth, if that sling is what's connecting them together, why would you not work to train it?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we've mentioned it, and I mean, honestly, we could easily go for like 90 minutes on this, but to keep this consolidated, I want to just shift gears and speak quickly more to specifically the neurological and the proprioceptive aspect of it, which this has actually been recently published or proven that fascial tissue has about 6 times more proprioceptive bodies and neurological or nerve endings when compared to muscle, right? So we mentioned movement literacy, we mentioned kinesthetic awareness, we mentioned proprioceptive balance, right? I always try to simplify the proprioceptive system by saying, think about it as like the sensors around your car, right? The automated sensors around your car. They're always on alert, they're always ready to go off, and they're always sensing and detecting external or environmental conditions. While that's occurring, there's another set of sensors, so to speak, that are detecting internal pressures and lengths and tensions, right? So once those sensors are detrained, for lack of better terms, it's like having a reliance on those external sensors and they're no longer working for you. So you have to do more to achieve less, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So that's my world. That speaks to my world where I have athletes that are, for the most part, fully functional and capable, but have substantial injury histories or, we'll just say somewhat compromised movement literacy or movement pools, right?
Yeah.
You think about somebody who's had multiple back surgeries. That's going to absolutely change the entire CNS and proprioceptive functioning, right, in and of itself. So with these things, I like to look to multi-planar, multi-dimensional movement. So moving in all different directions, a lot of which, and this is to the proprioceptive and neural side, is unplanned. Just kind of do a sequence of lunges and step in different places every time.
Yeah.
Do a step up and step at a different angle on every step, or have 2 boxes set up at different heights, right? What I latch on to is consistency plus variability plus durability equals availability.
Right.
There are those 3 pillars all have to kind of work together or coalesce in your training. And that will, in and of itself, just emphasize the fascial system.
Yeah. And I mean, to play off that, it's like the word ability. I mean, if someone has like the closest percentage of command to 100% of their fascial slings, I feel like if we're talking about an athlete here, their ability to just be able and just to be ready to go will be 1,000 times better.
We've kind of seen some anecdotal evidence of this with the COVID restrictions, right?
Okay.
Teams are having to sit and can't practice. They can only do shit virtually for 2-3 weeks at a time, and they're coming out and winning, and dudes are playing great, and they're speaking to it. They're saying, I've seen a lot of commentary on Twitter from like veterans and players kind of going back and forth on, hey, maybe we were right all along. Like, we're doing too much. There's too much going on. We just need to kind of take a step back and we'll play better.
Yeah.
So this is getting a little bit off topic here, but the system of the human body, the system of movement, I think needs to be a little bit more important or prioritized with coaching, because I think we just get so wrapped up in the muscular system and there's so much other shit going on, and that you need to put attention where it's important.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's still based off their goals. I mean, again, a bodybuilder probably won't give a shit about their fascial slings,
No
but
doubt.
then it still goes back to like taking pieces from different kind of like reps and then integrating it within the fascial system. That's what I think about.
And I would just cap that with, I would say if you're an athlete, to include weightlifting, it's pretty much a mandatory part of your training, or should be.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Man, we'll probably have to do a part 2 on this one, because there's a lot that
I know. When you were talking about stepping in different directions, how many coaches would have a field day with that? Like, your foot has to be placed like this.
Yeah.
I mean, like, going off that, there's times of where, you need to really slow it down, but hit that curve of like they're getting better and better. The variability, man.
Yeah. I beyond the obvious foundational strengths and movements and shit that need to be developed,
Yeah.
I just see a very, very quick diminishing returns on things like a single arm bent row, dumbbell RDL. Like, there's just so much other shit I think is more valuable to be doing with that time. Because that's what it all boils down to, is the time.
Yeah.
You have to fit within this hour parameter or within these hour parameters what
Yeah.
you think is the most important shit for someone to do to be better at their sport.
But combine it together, and now you're finding a way to work get the upper body and the lower body to transfer force together, and you're saving time.
Yeah. And when you're spending hours and hours and blocks on, again, a basic bilateral conventional step up or a basic, fucking dumbbell bench press, whatever, like,
Yeah.
man, look at Devonta Smith, right?
Or just look at any like
Like
4-year-old kid that could dunk that's never touched a weight or stepped in a weight room.
Yes, thank you. That's what I was gonna say.
There's more of this type of athlete where we're seeing they're more reliant on their elastic systems
Yeah.
than their muscular systems. And I think it's going to be even stronger of a wave in football in the years to come as we kind of start to get away from the more physical, violent side of it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to become more reliant on reflexive strength and ballistic strength and change of direction and power and speed,
Yeah.
So it just makes sense, man. And I think people get a little bit bent out of shape or misconstrued on it because, they just assume that you're trying to be nuanced. But again, it's like, this is just a part of the anatomy. We've just fucking looked at it because it was always considered to be, like, is it fucking expendable as fat tissue when doing cadaver studies and or analyzing. But anyhow.
I mean, mention the word fascia. Sometimes people will either be like, all right, what do you have to say? Or they'll just roll their eyes,
And I've seen way too much in my own world.
Yeah.
For me to feel otherwise. And, if we didn't mention it earlier, fascia training from Bill Parisi.
Yeah.
And obviously anatomy trains from Tom Myers.
Right.
Those will tell you everything and anything you could possibly need to know on the subject matter. But if nothing else, it's a fascinating topic to discuss. So we'll see where the research goes in the next couple of years.
We'll see.